You've done the work. You've learned to regulate your nervous system. You understand the science behind breathwork, cold exposure, discipline. You've built rituals that hold. A life that runs smoothly because you made it run smoothly. And for a long time, that was enough. But somewhere in the last few years, something shifted. Not dramatically, not in a way that disrupts your day. Just a quiet awareness that the tools that used to move you forward now just keep you level. You've hit a plateau, not the kind you notice immediately, not the kind that announces itself with crisis or collapse. This one is functional. Your system is calm. Your life is stable. The chaos that used to destabilize you doesn't land the same way anymore. But something feels missing. You can't quite name it. It's not depression. It's not burnout. It's more subtle than that. A sense that the self-reliance you built, the regulation you mastered, has delivered exactly what it promised. And somehow, that's not what you thought it would be. You've become very good at being alone with yourself. Maybe too good. The missing piece doesn't show up during the day. It surfaces in the margins, in the moment after your evening routine when the house goes quiet, in the realization that you can't remember the last conversation that actually moved something in you, in the awareness that you've become someone people respect but rarely reach. This is the plateau, and it's more common than you think. The science will tell you how regulation works. It'll show you the autonomic nervous system, the way your vagal tone improves with breath control, the way predictability calms cortisol. All of that is true. The mechanisms are real. But science doesn't tell you why you needed those tools in the first place. It doesn't explain why, somewhere earlier in your life, you learned that relying on yourself was safer than relying on anyone else. That's not a physiological question. That's a psychological one. And psychology asks different things. It asks what happened that made self-reliance feel like the only intelligent option. Because self-reliance doesn't usually start as strength. It starts as adaptation. It's what you do when the alternative has already proven unreliable. When the people who were supposed to be there weren't. When emotional availability was inconsistent or conditional or absent altogether. You didn't choose independence because it felt good. You chose it because dependence felt worse. And that's not failure. That's intelligence. You read the environment correctly. You adjusted. You survived by becoming someone who didn't need what wasn't being offered. That's not weakness. That's one of the most sophisticated responses a nervous system can produce. You learned to expect nothing so you wouldn't be disappointed. You learned to manage everything internally so you wouldn't be let down. You built a life that didn't require anyone to show up. But adaptation comes with a cost. The cost is that over time, the distance you created to protect yourself becomes the baseline. You stop expecting closeness because you stop needing it, or you tell yourself you stop needing it. Either way, the result is the same. You become excellent at managing your internal state. You become less capable of letting someone else affect it. And for years, that trade-off works. It keeps you stable, it keeps you functional, it keeps you safe. But eventually, you start to notice that the stability feels more like insulation. The calm feels more like flatness. And the self-reliance that once felt like freedom starts to feel like something else. The people around you might not see it. You're still present, you still show up, but there's a layer between you and them that never dissolves. A distance that feels reasonable until you realize it's everywhere. You've optimized for control, and control, when it becomes the only goal, starts to look a lot like isolation. This is where the practices plateau. Breathwork regulates your system. It doesn't reconnect you to another person. Discipline gives you structure. It doesn't give you intimacy. Cold exposure builds resilience. It doesn't build relational capacity. These tools are not the problem. They're just not designed to solve the problem that eventually emerges. Because the problem isn't that you can't calm yourself down. It's that you've become so good at calming yourself down that you've stopped letting anyone else in. You've built a life that doesn't need anyone. And at some point, that stops feeling like strength and starts feeling like exile. That's the plateau. You can regulate your way through almost anything now. But regulation is not connection. Safety is not intimacy. And at a certain point, the question stops being whether you can handle life alone. The question becomes whether you want to, whether the life you've built, the one that runs so smoothly, is actually the life you want to be living, or whether it's just the life you learned to survive well. That's a psychological question, and it doesn't have a scientific answer. This is where Freudora begins. Freudora is a place where the questions underneath the regulation start to surface. Not to dismantle what you've built, not to tell you the work was wrong, but to ask what that work was protecting you from, and whether it's still serving the life you're trying to live now. The tools you've built aren't the enemy, but they were built for a version of you that needed distance more than closeness. And if you've changed, if the threat isn't what it used to be, then the tools might be maintaining a system that no longer fits. Freudora doesn't offer protocols. It doesn't give you exercises. It just asks the questions you've been avoiding. The ones that don't resolve cleanly. The ones that sit in the space between what you've built and what you actually feel. You don't have to go there, but if you're here, watching this, there's a part of you that already knows something has shifted. So here's the question. What happens when survival is no longer the problem? What happens when the system you built to keep yourself safe is now the thing keeping you separate? What happens when the independence you fought for starts to feel like loneliness you can't admit to? You don't have to answer that now. You don't have to answer it at all. But the question doesn't go away just because you've learned to regulate your way past it. Self-reliance worked because it had to. It gave you control when control was all you had. It made you functional when functionality was survival. But there's a difference between surviving and living. And after a certain age, that difference starts to show. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. In the space between the life you've built and the one you didn't realize you stopped letting yourself want. You can keep regulating, you can keep building, you can keep refining the system, adding new tools, optimizing further. You can stay on the plateau and tell yourself it's enough. Or you can sit with the plateau and ask what it's trying to tell you. That's not a decision you make once. It's a recognition that surfaces slowly over time when the tools stop feeling like progress and start feeling like maintenance. When the calm stops feeling like peace and starts feeling like absence. When the self-reliance stops feeling like strength and starts feeling like the thing you do because you've forgotten how to do anything else. You've done the work. You've earned the calm. You've built something most people never manage to build. Now the question is, whether calm is enough, whether safety is enough, whether the distance that once protected you is now the thing you need protecting from. You don't have to answer that today. But the question is there, and it's not going anywhere.